Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with your host, Rear Admiral Jingles. As you can imagine, I get a lot of replays sent in, and particularly now that I have done a video showing everybody exactly how to enable the replay system in World of Warships, I'm starting to get a lot of World of Warships replays sent in, and that's fine because I love watching people playing World of Warships. Now, obviously, the majority of the games that do get sent in, and I do apologise for this, but they're never going to make it onto YouTube, the majority are decent games. Good, solid, reliable examples of World of Warships gameplay. Pretty much like the majority of games that I actually play in World of Warships. There's nothing wrong with them, but they just don't have that little extra something that deserves to make it into a YouTube video. And a lot of the games, I see people doing huge amounts of damage, but it's just not very exciting to watch. This is a particular problem with battleship replays. Something absolutely outstanding usually has to happen in a battleship game to make it stand out from the crowd. This is one of those absolutely spectacular games. This was submitted by Quackbar. He's in the Wakataki, the Japanese Tier 3 destroyer. I believe the nickname for this thing is the walkie-talkie, for what should be pretty obvious reasons. He's just fired his first spread of torpedoes at an incoming enemy cruiser. Now, the torpedoes on this ship have a range of 7 kilometers, and that ship was more than 7 kilometers away when he fired off those torpedoes, but the ship was steaming directly towards him, so there's a chance those torpedoes are going to hit. Right now, however, he's got much more immediate problems. He's been spotted by a whole bunch of enemy destroyers. There's that cruiser. He has turned to avoid the torpedoes, but down here at Tier 3, he only has 4 torpedoes that he can launch from 2 separate launchers, so the reload is blisteringly fast. He's still being shot up by those enemy destroyers over there, but he's dropped a smoke screen and he's manoeuvring to avoid fire until he escapes detection. And there we go, he's no longer being spotted. Those destroyers that were shooting at him now have their own problems, and that second spread of torpedoes that he launched at that cruiser, well, the cruiser is not driving in a straight line, so he's managed to escape the second torpedo salvo as well. And that's when he gets spotted again by another 2 enemy destroyers, both of which are within less than 5 kilometers of him. Now, they're not going to be able to hit him with torpedoes from here, and he fires off these 2 spreads of torpedoes at those cruisers at the back, or perhaps he's thinking that maybe those destroyers are going to try to sweep around behind him, but what that means is that now he's just fired off his torpedoes, and there's another enemy destroyer right next to him, and he's got nothing to fire at him other than his guns. The Wakataki is a low-tier Japanese destroyer. Its guns are absolutely terrible. Luckily, they were pointed in more or less the right direction, and he does set that destroyer on fire before turning around, hightailing it out of there. That guy is actually reversing. It looks like he ran aground. He's trying to reverse off the rocks. You can see shots coming out of the smoke screen. So Quackbar returns fire and hits him. There are his torpedoes. It was blind luck that his guns happened to be pointing in the right direction, and he was actually able to score some hits on that other Japanese destroyer because the turning speed of the 3 gun turrets, 3 120mm guns on this ship, is so slow. 45 seconds it takes this thing to rotate its turrets 180 degrees. There are battleships in the game that can turn their turrets faster than that. But that's fairly typical of your Japanese destroyers. The American destroyers, by contrast, are all about the guns and not so much the torpedoes. If a Japanese destroyer ends up getting into a close-range gunfight with an American destroyer, and the American destroyer doesn't completely suck, the Japanese destroyer is going to the bottom of the ocean. That's just the way it is. You really don't want to be getting into close-range knife fights in a Japanese destroyer, particularly a low-tier one like the Wakataki, unless you know you can hit and sink whatever it is you're fighting with your torpedoes. That St. Louis is right at the extreme range, 7 kilometers of the range of his torpedoes. He launches the torpedoes anyway, you never know your luck, and since his guns are pointing in the right direction, he lights him up with some high explosive. He knocks out some of his guns. If your guns are pointing at the target and you know you've been detected anyway, then there's absolutely no harm whatsoever in firing, particularly when they're tunnel visioning on something else. Now, he's no longer detected, he's stopped firing his guns. Firing your guns is the single thing you can do that adds most to the range at which your ship is going to be detected on the surface by other ships. The Wakataki has a surface detection range of 6.1 kilometers, which is good. It's a very stealthy little ship. But when you fire the guns on this ship, you increase the range at which you can be detected on the surface by around 4 kilometers. That's right. It's a huge difference. You start firing the guns on this ship, anybody within 10 kilometers is going to know where you are. This is why I despair whenever I'm playing World of Warships, and at the start of the match it's always the guys in the destroyers who charge forward straight to the nearest cap circle, blindly firing their guns just on the off chance that they're going to hit something. And it comes as, well, no surprise to anybody that these are the guys who always die first. When you're giving your position away in a ship that relies upon stealth for its survivability, it comes as no surprise that you're the first one on the team to die. Meanwhile, Quackbar down here has not been firing his guns now that that friendly St. Louis is dead and there's nothing over here other than him to occupy the attention of those 3 enemy ships over there. But he is launching his torpedoes, and what do people do in World of Warships? They know there's a destroyer there. There's the bloody smokescreen. But yeah, if you can't see him, he mustn't be there, right? So they keep driving in straight lines. Now, this is the point at which things start happening that set this replay apart from the crowd. He's launched off a set of torpedoes about 30 seconds ago at a St. Louis as he turns around to engage this destroyer. Now he's been detected, so he pops his smoke generator, but he's going too quickly to stay effectively concealed in the smoke screen. And these guys are all lighting him up. Now, do you see that? He's just popped out of view range, but there's a Kawachi-class battleship over there, and that guy was actually 8.8 kilometers away from Quackbar when he fired these torpedoes, and he wasn't even aiming them at him. Yeah, hits him anyway. There he goes. He is well and truly detected now, of course, after having fired off yet another spread of torpedoes by an enemy cruiser who's given him a really good pasting here. Some pretty accurate fire. He starts manoeuvring, of course the cruiser spotted him, everybody else starts shooting at him. It's time to take Billy Big Steps in the other direction and get the hell out of here. But what about those torpedoes? That St. Louis was actually 200 meters outside the maximum range of these torpedoes when Quackbar launched them. If there's one thing you can always depend on in World of Warships, it's the fact that people will continue to sail in a straight line even when they've been shooting at an enemy destroyer. They didn't even have the excuse that they didn't know he was there. They were trying to kill him a minute ago. Tenryu class cruiser, the Japanese Tier 3. Quite a decent little ship, coming around the far side of that island, 6.4 kilometers away. It's only 600 meters inside his maximum torpedo range. He fires a speculative spread of torpedoes off at him anyway. But they're never going to hit, right? Yeah, just wait. Meanwhile, there is an enemy destroyer heading over to the left-hand side of the screen here. There he is. He's just around the other side of that island. And in the middle of that smoke screen, which has probably just been dropped by that enemy destroyer, there's a St. Louis class cruiser. Now, if there's one thing that a St. Louis is good at, it's killing destroyers, and he's really, really close. And there you go, the Tenryu just kept sailing in a straight line, didn't he? Ran straight into 2 of those torpedoes. This St. Louis, however, while it's a fantastic ship for killing destroyers, you have to actually be sailing it with your eyes open. So, there's Quackbar's first actual kill. He's managed to get the high caliber award so far in this game, and that's the first time he's actually sunk anything. Now, he has of course been spotted, just for a change, and he's taking fire yet again from another enemy cruiser. That's the Japanese Tier 2, the Chikama. Japanese cruisers don't get torpedoes until Tier 3, so the Chikama is just a gunboat, but it's not a bad little gunboat at all. Quackbar is practically a one-shot kill at this point. He lines up on the Chikama, he fires his torpedoes. I don't even bother why I try to build up the element of suspense at this point. You know exactly what's going to happen. There's the Chikama. Oh look, there's an enemy destroyer within 7 kilometers of me. Quick, I'd better make sure I drive in a straight line. He's now around the side of the island. He's finished capping the B point, which is the first time during the course of this game that his team has controlled more than one capture point and have never had more than half the number of points of the enemy team. And bang, there we go. It's as sure as death and taxes, isn't it? And there's the Confederate Award as well as high caliber. The Chikama's in serious trouble, however, but he can still sink Quackbar. He just has to hit him. Quackbar's trying to launch the torpedoes, but no, just screw it, just shoot him. Gets one salvo of torpedoes off. He's still got one tube in reserve. Finishes them off with his guns. Quackbar did play well in this game, but what's spectacular isn't so much how he played, it's just how mind-bogglingly badly the enemy team played, and yet they're winning. It's just... Let's just stop and take stock of the situation here for the moment. Quackbar has just capped B, and he's now moving to cap C as well. This is the first time, thanks to him, that his team are actually gaining points faster than the enemy. Well, I say that, but they've just lost another ship. They're now outnumbered 2-1 again. So they've just lost a bunch more points. Oh, there's that Kawachi-class battleship that kept running into the torpedoes. He was firing from well outside of his maximum torpedo range. What do you think's going to happen here? Oh no, the enemy team are starting to cap A. He's never going to win this on points. He's going to have to kill everything. The lone other surviving member of his team is a cruiser who's right at the other end of the map, desperately trying to kill that enemy destroyer who's capturing the A point. And this is the first point at which Quackbar does something that's really, well, not smart. That Kawachi is 7.3 kilometers away, or was 7.3 kilometers away when Quackbar launched these torpedoes. So unless he's moving directly towards him and Quackbar's just capped C, those torpedoes are never going to hit. All they're going to do is warn this guy that there's a destroyer out there. But, well, we've all seen just how much attention people pay to the fact that there's a destroyer out there, haven't we? Quackbar is now within effective firing range and launches a second spread of torpedoes. But two things are happening right now.
You are the last hope.
First of all, he's now the sole surviving member of his team, but the friendly cruiser did manage to take one of the enemy ships down with him. The second thing that just happened was that battleship's torpedo warning alarm will have been going off as the first salvo of torpedoes that Quackbar fired closed to within about 200 meters and then harmlessly ran out of steam and sank to the bottom of the ocean. If that guy had at least been sailing in a straight line, he would have lived, but he's not even doing that. He's sitting dead in the water. And so that's Quackbar's next kill. So he's still outnumbered 2-1. And the enemy team know where he is because he's just capped C, and they're finally exhibiting a little bit of brain power, and they're both coming at him at the same time. He's been detected, he's launched his torpedoes at that Tenryu at a range of 6.7 kilometers. The Tenryu is sailing straight towards him, but it's still going to take his torpedoes 30 seconds to cover that distance, and that's when the other Wakataki comes around the other side of the island. Finally, a bit of teamwork from the enemy team. The Wakataki is broadside on, he can fire all of his guns at him, and he's going to be launching torpedoes as well, and it comes as no surprise to anybody whatsoever that the Tenryu continued to sail in a straight line and ran face first into the torpedoes that he launched 30 seconds ago. He's managed to avoid the Wakataki's torpedoes, and he's taken a hit. He's down to 700 health, but when these ships are at this kind of close range and turning and burning at these kind of speeds, they find it almost impossible to keep their guns trained on each other. So instead, he launches the torpedoes, and at that kind of range, at that kind of speed, they're just not going to miss. That was awesome. So, an epic conclusion to an absolutely spectacular match by Quackbar and the Wakataki, Japanese Tier 3 destroyer. And it owed as much to the sheer incompetence of the enemy team as it did to Quackbar's own skills, but he did play a good game in this little destroyer. And it's worth pointing out that despite the sheer bloody-minded incompetence of the enemy team on display throughout the majority of that match, they were winning. Which it tells you everything that you need to know about the standard of gameplay by Quackbar's own team. He definitely carried the match there. 5 kills, 13 torpedo hits, capped twice. Absolutely amazing game to watch, and there's plenty more where that one came from. That's it for today anyway, folks. I hope you've been... I don't see how you can fail to have been amused by that replay. It was absolutely spectacular stuff. I certainly hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. As always, folks, take care, and I'll catch you next time.